But the problem with this movie is the title of the movie in other places other than the United States is not a pirate movie, though it's about pirates, maybe of a different sort. The entertaining kinds of pirates, because this month has been a fucking wasteland. I mean, from Polanski's Pirates, which we were kind of talking about before we started recording, to Yellowbeard, which is a bad movie of its own variety. This month so far has not been one worth repeating. May I put it that way? But there may be some hope yet, because on this episode of the Kulturecast, I am joined by my good friend. He is the home entertainment correspondent for Movie Geeks United. You have heard him here many times before, but you're hearing him here again this month to join me to talk all about pirate radio, otherwise known as the boat that rocked. Your friend and mine, Adam Long.
Hello again.
I'm here. I'm here, folks. You are here. I always love having you on because for the most part, I just say, hey, what do you want to talk about? And you always come up with something, and you picked this movie, and it's a movie that I had been meaning to watch for a very long time. So without further ado, let's get to The Boat That Rocked.
When the British government banned rock and roll from the radio,
we're going to shut them down.
One American DJ,
let's rock!
And a band of misfits took their message to the streets.
Rock and roll!
From the creator of Love Actually and Notting Hill.
The first moment I saw you, I fell in love with you.
Rolling Stone raves. It's a rip-roaring comedy.
I intend to broadcast from this ship until the day I die. And then for a couple days after that.
Pirate Radio, rated R, in theaters November 13th.
So the film is directed and written by Richard Curtis. It stars a whole lot of people because it is an ensemble cast. Philip Seymour Hoffman's in there, Bill Nye, Rhys Ifans, Nick Frost, Chris O'Dowd for like a minute, Rhys Darby is in there, Kenneth Branagh is in the movie, Emma Thompson stops by, and Gemma Arterton is in there. A very, 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 very young Gemma Arterton is in there as well. And the movie is all about a pirate radio group that are sitting in between the United States and the UK, broadcasting for the world to hear all about their music that they want to play, and they're not going to have it any other way. So, Adam, I want to know all about your thoughts on this movie and why we're watching it for Pirate Month.
Because of the U.S. title, Pirate Radio, I guess you were doing your pirate thing, and I thought, well, this is it's pirating, but a different kind of pirating, of course, not the R type of pirating.
But no, those pirate movies have come up so short this month; they deserve to have the R taken out of them.
No, I'm a big music buff. As I've said many times, I'm sure on the show, that my father was a vinyl collector from the time he was about 4 years old. So, my knowledge of popular American music, and really just popular music in general, is pretty wide and vast because of my dad's influence. And so I have to always make mention of that. And this film is a music-centric film, I will say that, and it's based on I guess it's a true story, but I'm sure they played loose with the facts as they usually do in these sorts of things. But it was about a boat that essentially, I didn't know this, that in the British airwaves, you were restricted to playing 30 minutes of music a day, I think it was. I think that's what I read. And to fill in the gaps, because this was during the British invasion, and there were a lot of groups that were popping up, not just the Beatles, of course, but you had the Kinks and the Searchers, and the Rolling Stones, and just so many British acts, Herman's Hermits, we could go on and on. There's so many of them. And there was a demand for music that wasn't being met by the airwaves, as it were. And so this group of guys just decided to put together a pirate radio station on the water, and it was constantly on the move, so they couldn't put a stop to it. That's essentially what it was. And so you get all these colorful characters that are, I don't know if any of these actual characters really existed in real life or not. I'm not sure. But
one of them possibly did. The Philip Seymour Hoffman character.
I was going to say the Count may have been an actual character. I'm not sure. But and I could believe that. I really could believe that. But the rest of them are probably from the minds of the filmmaker himself, who has done this sort of thing with other films such as Love Actually. He's really talented at Richard Curtis we're talking about, who's very talented at balancing a large cast. It's a real interesting balancing act that you have to do when you're dealing with films of this scope. And he's really, Love Actually, there's kind of a little bit of a backlash on that. And I have a fondness for it. I have to admit it. It's treacly and a little overly sentimental. I get it. But it really, I still find it moving. And I find his ability to take that cast and, keep all their plot lines on track for the most part. And then he does the same thing with The Boat That Rocked, aka Pirate Radio. And I think he does it very well. I can't say that this is a great film. It's not perfect because it is just a series of vignettes with what's the comings and goings of the people on the boat and the different DJs' various personal lives and all of that. So it's not, if you're looking for depth or the answers to life's mysteries, you're probably not going to find it here. But there are some really genuinely moving scenes in the film. I really love the scene where Philip Seymour Hoffman is sitting there, and it turned out to be sadly prophetic, where he's sitting there and he says, "These are the best days of our lives." And and I just want to take it all in because it's not going to get any better than this. And of course, he was dead about 6 years after this film was shot. So I'm watching that, and it did make me a little wistful that he's saying those words, knowing that he didn't have very long in this world after he shot this film. So, that adds a little, and he was still alive, I think, when I saw this film the last time. So that kind of adds a little dramatic punch, an emotional punch for me, I should say, that was not there before. But this was also the first time that I had seen the complete 2 hour and 15-minute version of the film that was shown in cinemas in the UK. When it came to America, it was, the big criticisms, which is true with a lot of Richard Curtis's films, that it was a lengthy film, and there are a lot of stories to tell. And so Focus Features, it cost, I think, about $30 million, which was quite a bit. I mean, there's a lot going on. The film kind of ends like Titanic in a way, with the ship, spoiler alert, but the ship going down. And so there's a lot of, effects and all of that busyness going on. And the music budget of this film must have eaten up, God, I can't imagine. I would say at least a couple $1 million. I'll get your take on that. That should be interesting to hear what you think.
It's like if the Forrest Gump soundtrack was good. I mean, in a lot of, in a lot of ways, like it has that same, like we're putting time, care, and attention into the soundtrack. And obviously, like you've mentioned, the theme of the movie lends itself to having good needle drops, or at least the people who are making the movie cognizant of how the needle drops need to be interpreted. Because again, like you mentioned, this is a movie about a group of people on a boat who play music. So if the needle drops weren't good, I'd be really worried. However, I think to your point, I've seen a couple movies that Richard Curtis has written. I am, like yourself, a fan of Love Actually. I do not detest it with some sort of misplaced vitriol that I think people feel towards it. I don't, maybe it's not something I understand why people hate, but I understand why people love it for sure. And I consider myself someone who, at least on the times I've seen it, I enjoy it. But I'm also a huge fan of his script for the Bean movie from 1997, which...
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, again, like, it is what it is. It's a Mr. Bean movie for good and for bad, but I think it works better than most of those kinds of things tend to work. And I mean, again, Richard Curtis, I think, has a strong sense of not only comedy, but written comedy and physical comedy. And there's some physical comedy in this movie. There's not a whole lot. I think most of the comedy through this movie is delivered through the dialogue of the characters. But to your point, I think this is a fun movie. This is a movie that's been on my list of things to see since it came out. It's really sobering to think that this movie came out in 2009. I thought this movie came out in 2015. It definitely did not come out in 2015. No. But the thing that's funny is, like, when this movie came out in 2009, all the people in this movie I mean, their careers were in interesting spots. And I think out of the people whose career was in the most interesting spot, it's Philip Seymour Hoffman, because it's in this kind of weird lull period right before his career picks kind of right back up again. Because again, if you're an Oscar winner, it kind of goes like that sometimes. But I mean, he would go on to be in another Paul Thomas Anderson movie, The Master, and then all the kind of accolades that would come with that right before he passed away. So it's interesting to see him kind of in a movie where he is in a lot of ways like the odd man out. He's the one that doesn't belong, and in a lot of ways he should have been the main character of the movie, but that's kind of beside the point. And it's really funny to see Tom Sturridge, like, however long it is until the Sandman show on Netflix would premiere, because I kept like looking at him. I was like, he looks really familiar, but I can't place him. I was like, oh, right. He has his own Netflix show now. So, I think, at a 1,000-yard glance, is it a little too long? Yeah. And that might be my biggest immediate issue with the movie, is just, it is a little long. Like, it's 2 hours and 10 minutes, and it feels I would say like 25 minutes, maybe 30 minutes too long. Maybe that's too much to take out of the movie, but like, it is a little long. For sure, a little long.
Yeah, I saw when I saw it, I saw the American version. I had not seen the full-length UK version of the film until I watched it for this show that we're doing. So I wasn't familiar with this version, and I felt like this version was like the other version just seemed truncated. Yeah, you do feel like it could be shortened, but then when it was shortening, you feel like something's missing. I don't know if they just chose to take out the wrong stuff, and which does happen. Sometimes they make the wrong choices when they cut stuff. And it felt like a lot of small character moments were completely omitted in the version that I saw previously. So this one felt more satisfying to me, especially in the last hour. I think the first hour felt a little bit like that could have been shortened a little bit, but the last hour seemed to really solidify itself in a good way.
I was actually going to ask, because, you mentioned that the movie has this kind of Titanic adjacent ending. Of all the things that feel tacked on, that's the thing that feels the most tacked on. And I'm not talking about like the emotional weight of what's going on, because I appreciate that. Obviously, like, we have to understand that this journey is coming to an end by hook or by crook, of no fault of their own, or you could blame them, I guess, however you want to look at it. But I think what was most interesting to me is like the ending is the part that stuck out, because it felt the most unnecessary to have this giant set piece of them in the boat and it's sinking, and a fake out with Philip Seymour Hoffman dying. It's like, this is a different movie. Like, this is a different movie in the different genre of movie almost entirely. Like, it felt so strangely out of place.
Well, I agree with you on that count. Yeah, I meant the character stuff.
Okay. Just the
last hour. I agree with you on the stuff about the, as you call it, Titanic adjacent. That's a good way to put it. Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, that stuff could have been. The ending of it is a little bit out of sync with the rest of the movie. So yeah, I can't really argue with you on that point. But I do like a lot of the character stuff though during the last hour. Though a lot of the little character moments where you find out the one character has gotten married, but his wife is actually in love with somebody else, and so you get all that stuff, and that's and there's a lot of other subplots going on there where they have to walk the plank literally, and
there are a lot of subplots in the movie, and again, I don't think that is necessarily a negative, but I think it's more indicative of this kind of movie. This movie, I think, needed to be 2 hours almost to get all the character stuff in. And in a lot of ways, like and I read a couple of reviews that said, well, Richard Curtis's script is funny, but he doesn't really have anything to say about the characters. And I feel like maybe if we didn't have this like weird Titanic ending, they could have given us more of those character moments without that kind of looming presence of the boat is sinking, because some of the character moments come like right before that, and then you don't get a whole lot afterwards of character moments. It's just them all pretending like they're going to die, and we all know they're not going to. Like, the movie does everything in its power to convince us of one thing, but we know that's not going to happen. I feel like, even if, again, you don't know the real story behind this, which doesn't do much to inform the story, I don't think there's any way anyone watching this movie would go, oh yeah, all of our characters at the end are going to die. I don't understand why they have Philip Seymour Hoffman pretend to sacrifice himself for no reason and then come back. Like, it kind of takes the emotional weight out of that decision, but that decision made no sense to begin with. But I feel like if they had not done that weird ending, they could have maybe, again, I get what they were getting at. They're trying to show the amount of people that have been listening to their radio station, but I feel like there's a better way to get there than this contrived, like, oh, well, we're sinking and we're all going to die. Like, well, why are there stakes all of a sudden? Why are there those kinds of stakes? Really, like, them getting shut down, I get, perfectly understandable. You have a Kenneth Branagh character, you have the Jack Davenport character, but like that other stuff of like, oh, now the boat is sinking, like it so comes out of left field that it takes away from everything else the movie's trying to do. It takes away from time spent with the characters doing something interesting. It's like these weird forced moments that kind of don't work. Like when Tom Sturridge finds out who his real dad is.
Right. Yeah.
Or Philip Seymour Hoffman pretending to kill himself for the sake of music, I guess. Like those, I don't like, again, like those moments, they feel so forced, but I just take like the last 10 minutes off this movie. And like, I know that the American version of the movie didn't edit the climax out. It edited things out of the movie because there's no way to change the climax of this movie. You're not going to take the boat sinking out of your movie. That's not going to happen. Clearly, they've made sure it was in there, again, by hook or by crook.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I misspoke, by the way, earlier. It was a $50 budget. I believe it was $50 million estimated production cost. And even after its U.S. run, U.S. and U.K. combined, it was only $36.6 million that it recouped. So it did not do well at all. And so that was the big concern. It just I think it did only $10 million in its first 3 months in the U.S. actually. So or rather, I'm sorry, in the U.K. it made only what was equivalent to $10 million in U.S. dollars in the first 3 months. And so I'm sure they were panicking, and that's why they decided to trim it.
Well, and my question to you is, in 2009, who of the names in this film are going to appeal to American audiences other than Philip Seymour Hoffman? Like Rhys Ifans, Nick Frost, Rhys Darby, like even now, like I guess maybe of those people, Chris O'Dowd and Rhys Ifans and Rhys Darby now because of things like Flight of the Conchords, and I guess Jack Davenport would have had a pretty high visibility then, and Kenneth Branagh. Kenneth Branagh is in this movie as the legacy actor, just like Bill Nye. Like they're in this movie to lend gravitas to it, but they're not the draw. That's the thing I don't get about this movie coming to the United States. Like, who in the United States was going to go see this movie? Who was this for in the States? Because again, Philip Seymour Hoffman ultimately is not even the main character of this movie. In the advertising for the American audience, it made it seem that way, though.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's strange. You're right, and I don't know what they were thinking in terms of who the audience would be. And it's now obviously Rhys Ifans with his appearance in the Spider-Man, is the first the Amazing Spider-Man. I'll get it out. That gave him some credibility with a certain set of the movie-going public. But that was 3 years after.
Right. So
at this point, he was just kind of a quirky British actor that had appeared in some a few things that had a cult following, and that was kind of it. Same thing with Nick Frost. There's obviously Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz, but I'm not sure how mainstream those are. Those kind of appeal to a certain audience as well. So
I was wondering that myself. Like, I met Nick Frost in 2007 at the premiere, the AFI premiere of Hot Fuzz with Simon Pegg and Edgar Wright, and there were people lined up, but not the way it would be now. Like, maybe Simon Pegg, sure. Edgar Wright, again, I think Edgar Wright for a certain audience is going to motivate them. And Nick Frost the same way, but like those people weren't lining up in droves in this country to see this movie. It honestly feels like it's a movie full of English character actors and, quote, comedians, unquote. Like,
That's true.
It's just weird that they made a US edit of this movie, as all I'm saying. It's so strange, like, to try and, what did they do? I guess they probably just cut the British actors out. Like, because again, like, they can't substantially change the narrative of the movie that much, whatever narrative it may or may not have. Because again, to your point, like, it really is less a story about all these people and what they're doing, and more just like the fuckaroos that they're getting into on a daily basis. Like, what, you know, people are coming to the boat to do this, or they're tasked with doing X, Y, or Z. Like, it's less, the one specific thing happening. Like, even Emma Thompson just is there for a second. Like, most of it really feels like a vignette or a string of vignettes. Again, not a bad thing, but it's just, I'm not sure that the American audience was ever going to be there for this the way that they were hoping it was going to be.
Right. Yep. I would tend to agree. Yeah. Because it doesn't, you know, and a lot of these actors are people who have previously been in Richard Curtis projects anyway. So there were a lot of returning faces here. There's some new ones, obviously, like Philip Seymour Hoffman, but there are quite a few that had been in his other projects, because he kind of has a crew of stock actors that he uses for a lot of his stuff. And, you know, I know Rhys Ifans was in Notting Hill, obviously, and that was written by Richard Curtis. So, you know, he's one example. And of course, Emma Thompson was in Love Actually. There's another example.
Same with Bill Nye.
Bill Nye, I was going to get to that yet. So, you know, there is something of a stock company that he likes to bring on board for his projects that really aren't marquee names in America. Let's just put it that way. So,
well, and again, like, I don't know how, I mean, again, like, I know of how marquee names they are in the UK, but there are some people that I was actually surprised weren't in here, like a Noel Fielding. I was glad to see Chris O'Dowd, because this is around the same time as stuff like the IT Crowd. So it makes sense that he's in there. But, you know, it's interesting because all of these people, I would say, have, you know, for the most part, unless they were already established, have much bigger careers now, like Rhys Darby, like Chris O'Dowd, I would say a Nick Frost, even, like, you know, their careers, I think, are so much further, or especially Tom Sturridge, like, their careers are so much further than they were in this movie, to the point where, like, they could never get all these people together anymore the way that they did now. Because, I mean, even Rhys Ifans was in one of the primary characters in the Game of Thrones TV show, and will be moving forward. True, yeah. So, like, everybody now has a visibility to them that it kind of makes this movie feel a little bit quaint watching it back. It's like, oh, all these actors are kind of right before they were all becoming huge. Because again, I mentioned Gemma Arterton, but also January Jones is in this movie in a very minor role as well. So, and Tallulah Riley as well, who would go on to be on Westworld for like 3 or 4 seasons. So it's surprising to see all these people in this movie. But all that said, I think they're all pretty fun. I think that the ensemble nature of the movie is obviously the way we're going to judge it. And I think everybody works together pretty well. And I think that the ensemble comedy, for the most part, lands. I think of all the people whose characters I maybe didn't resonate with the most, and I was the most surprised by this myself, was Nick Frost's character is kind of the one that I just wasn't the biggest fan of. And he's the actor who I'm probably the biggest fan of outside of this movie.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you on that. Yep. There's not a lot going on with him. There's nothing really to distinguish him other than he's, you know, a bit of a ladies' man, I guess you would say. But
I guess, like, it all kind of comes off feeling a little creepy. And again, like, there's a point where Tom Sturridge and Nick Frost are going to swap places, which is the old Revenge of the Nerds gag. It's totally not rape, everybody, but it is. And they're going to do that gag from Revenge of the Nerds in the movie, I think rightfully and smartly subverts your expectations by having Tom Sturridge come in, the lights come on, and he says, oops, wrong room, and leaves. But, like, Nick Frost's character is the one who sets up that scenario. And it's just, I don't know, like, of all the characters in the movie, he's the one that feels the most paper thin and almost like a caricature or a stereotype of the kind of character that you expect to see in these movies. I just didn't expect it would be Nick Frost playing that character, I guess is the bigger surprise. He's normally a lot more likable, even when he's not, like in something like Shaun of the Dead, where his character is a little abrasive. But even then, it's like he's abrasive, but he's still lovable. In this movie, he's abrasive and just kind of a dickhead.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good way to put it. I couldn't have said it better. Yeah. I'm not really. There's not a lot of emotional investment in him. So yeah, except and if there is, it's not the kind of feelings that will endear you to him. Let's just say that. So
no. And I think it's interesting. I'm curious your thoughts on using Tom Sturridge as kind of the audience surrogate. What did you think of that framing device as kind of, we get onto the boat with his character and ostensibly we're following his story with all these characters around it?
I think that's probably the best way to pull this thing off as far as a framing, as far as a device and that would allow us to meet these various characters, because I'm not sure, you kind of have to have a character that kind of holds the glue together, so to speak. And I guess he's that guy, and you're somewhat seeing this from his viewpoint, I guess. And so I think that works as well, and he's young and impressionable. And so he's going to see things in a nostalgia colored light, I guess you would say, because this happened at a certain time in his life. And so that's also going to make these people look, these actual characters that inhabit the boat, that are the DJs. It's going to make them probably a little bit different than what they really are in real life, having seen them through his eyes. So I think that works. I'm not sure how else you would have been able, because there's so many characters. I'm not sure how you would have been able to put them all together in this film without some sort of a one mainstay that kind of is right there in the middle of all of it. I don't really have any ideas as to how they would have solved that problem otherwise. So I think it works for me.
I think I would have preferred maybe if Philip Seymour Hoffman's character had been the main character of the movie. I mean, again, I know that that's a little, I guess, American-centric of me, but I feel like there would have been some things to mine from that. Yeah. And I'm not saying that the Tom Sturridge story of like, oh, he's on the boat to find his dad, I'm not saying that doesn't carry some emotional weight, but the movie doesn't really give it a whole lot of emotional weight. There's a moment where Thick Kevin, played by Tom Brooke, who's one of the better kind of just esoteric characters in the movie, who really is just given funny lines to say and very little else. He's like, why are you here? Are you here because your dad's on this boat? And it's like, what the fuck, movie? Like Deus Ex Machina all of a sudden. It's so strange because it's effectively like 3 or 4 scenes in the movie, and that's it. In a 2 hours and 10-minute long movie, the main character's main problem is given 4 scenes and that's it. And again, it's not given a lot of emotional weight, and it comes back later in the movie during the climax when the boat is sinking, because Tom Sturridge has to save his father, who is obsessed with his vinyl collection to the point where he's going to drown with it. It feels kind of ultimately throwaway. And that's why I was kind of like, well, I was curious what you thought, because it almost felt like a little bit of he's kind of an afterthought in the second half of the movie. Like he's used as a character introduced us to all the characters in the first half of the movie. But in the second half of the movie, where he should kind of be the focus as opposed to sharing all that time with everybody in the first half, he kind of becomes an afterthought for this. The boat is sinking and, you've disgraced my honor. Like, he should have been the main character, and he ends up getting lost in the shuffle to the point where, why did we need a main character to begin with? Like, just maybe it's just the American who's out of sorts with all the Brits, because that's kind of a more interesting direction to go than my dad's maybe on the boat. And I'm the good looking guy. Like, I don't know what I mean. Again, like, I'm not saying he doesn't have a character. I'm not saying that Tom Sturridge isn't talented. He's fantastic on Sandman, but he's not given much to do here. Like, and they kind of forget that he's the main character in the second half of the movie.
Well, yeah, and you're getting me to rethink this, and you're exactly right. I can't argue with anything that you're saying. I just think that if they had made Philip Seymour Hoffman the main character, it would have been a completely different film. And as you're alluding to, probably a better film. It would have been interesting to see him as kind of the ringleader of this ragtag group of disc jockeys who are defying just thumbing their nose at society or the government or whatever. That would have been an interesting take on it, and just eliminate the Tom Sturridge character. But it would have been a completely different film, and probably a better one now that I think about it. So yeah, I can't argue.
Well, and it's, I'm not saying that a lot of the issues come from the idea that, Tom Sturridge's character is the focus of the movie, but they have certain moments in the movie that they take time out to kind of have him doing something specific, like the evening he loses his virginity to Tallulah Riley, or the whole thing with him and Tallulah Riley and Nick Frost. Like, if that were another character and not Tom Sturridge, I don't think we as the audience would care that much, because we understand that this is not the main character of the piece. I think maybe even if you don't want to have Philip Seymour Hoffman as the lead, maybe just have it be a pure ensemble without a main character. And that's kind of, again, where it ends up going towards the end of the movie, is you see every character kind of get that little moment at the end. So you feel like you've seen every character get at least some sort of conclusion. I guess maybe the only one is Kenneth Branagh's character. You never get to see him. I guess you get to hear him swallow it, but you don't get to see him really, quote, get his moment of kind of feeling like a big dummy, which is fine. But I think, again, the movie ends up feeling like such an ensemble piece that Tom Sturridge just gets lost in the shuffle, which is unfortunate. But I mean, if I think about Love Actually, another ensemble movie that Richard Curtis did, that movie doesn't really have a main character. It has several main characters, but not any one main character. Obviously, different storytelling convention, but it's still a complicated story to try and land. And so is an ensemble cast. Ensemble casts are not easy to write, which is why you write it with one character that you can kind of give as the outsider that everybody else has to play off.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, that's a testament to Richard Curtis's talent. The fact that he's able to, do that sort of thing and do it fairly well. That's one of his strengths, as I said earlier. But yeah, I mean, I did find a list of the scenes cut from the film that are available in at least some of the film's home media releases. There's a long scene of a late night sabotage aboard a competitor's vessel, and the Count's homage to the Beatles delivered in front of Abbey Road Studios. There's Gavin in a flashback dancing in a Latin American bar to Get Off My Cloud. I don't remember that in the version that I saw. Maybe it was there and I just don't remember. But and then there's Simon lip syncs Lorraine Ellison's Stay With Me in its entirety. And then there's Midnight Mark entertaining 30 naked women. I did see that in the film. That was not in the original version that I saw. So that's there for sure. So
and I think that I liked that scene. I mean, again, a character that's given very little to do throughout the movie is given one scene where you understand his character entirely. Like you get it. They come into the room and he's with all those naked women. It's like, all right, I get this character and I don't really need to see anything else.
Yeah, I did not remember that. So that must have been different for sure.
When this movie is set, I understand why they choose the music that they choose. And some of it is not period specific, because Let's Dance is 83.
Yeah, 83. That's right. Yeah, it's a long time after this film takes place. I see. The one that I was thinking about was Father and Son by Cat Stevens. That's it. Because that was 1975. And although, there's the father and son in the film, and I see what he was getting at, he wanted to, kind of underline what was going on in the film. And it's a nice touch, but I just, when something's anachronistic, it kind of gets under my skin. And that was, and that one did, because I know that's from 75. So that's a little ways out too. But other than that, all of the stuff it looks like they did the research pretty well, because it's all period specific that would have been during the time that the film takes place. And that's impressive to me. A lot of times you see these types of movies and they get it wrong. And that just, that was a big complaint of mine with Bohemian Rhapsody, for one example, recently, a couple of years ago. And I saw that, and they got that all wrong right from the beginning of the movie, where they showed them playing Fat Bottom Girls at their 1975 U.S. debut concert. And that's a song, of course, that wasn't released until 1979. And so when something like that happens once, it just takes me out of the movie, and then I'm on hyper alert looking for that sort of thing to happen again. Because if it happens once, I'm thinking, okay, what else have they have they been lazy about with their research? But I can't find too much fault with this movie. I really can't. And I think obviously, I think Richard Curtis came up during that period. He's about 10 years older than myself, maybe a little older than that, 15 years maybe. So, he would have lived during those times, and so he probably remembers this stuff quite well. But yeah, good choices, I would say, for the most part. And there's some in here that were, that were huge hits, but just as is the case with a lot of pop songs, huge hits that once they were gone from the charts, you just didn't hear them anymore. And one is "The Happening" by the Supremes. That was a #1 record, sold 1 million copies. And it was the theme from a film from 1967 called "The Happening." And it's probably one of the least known songs of the entire career of Diana Ross and the Supremes. And yet it was a #1 record. So, and I thought that was interesting that they included it in here. It charted in 1967. So that is one example that I had of things that they picked that wouldn't have been the obvious choices. There's some in here that, obviously have been played quite a bit, like "A Whiter Shade of Pale" and "These Arms of Mine." But then you get something like "The Happening" or 98.6, which was a group called Keith had a hit from it with it in the United States, and that was a minor chart hit as well. So there's some good choices here. So I have to admit.
Well, and you said it. I mean, you put it perfectly. Like, they do have The Who and Jimi Hendrix, and Procol Harum and Otis Redding, but they're not always using. I mean, I guess in some of the cases they are, but they do have The Who show up multiple times, and it's not just for my generation, thankfully. Like, there are plenty of those kind of eye-rolling groaners of needle drops that you've heard in everything else or has been used a million other times, but there, like you said, there are other ones that aren't that way, and the diegetic ones throughout the movie, I think, are all period. The stuff that's not diegetic is right, because is Cat Stevens technically diegetic during the movie? Because this is one of these movies where there's lots of diegetic music and then there's non-diegetic music, and sometimes it's hard to keep it straight because it's like, I don't think this movie is quiet at any point. I think there's music underscoring literally every moment of the movie. I know that the playlists are like 60 songs, I think, is almost how many like songs there are. So it's a long playlist of music from the movie that they use. And it's, again, like the movie has the Beach Boys and the Rolling Stones, but it doesn't feel overwhelming. And maybe this is just me feeling like a little bit of a reprieve from the Forrest Gump soundtrack that felt just oppressive in its needle drops.
I would agree. Yeah. And the problem with Forrest Gump, which another movie that people like to kick, but I have to admit, I kind of like it.
The movie's fine. Like the movie's better than the soundtrack. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. The problem I have with Forrest Gump is that the films in the soundtrack are just so worn to death. And they were worn to death when the film came out because there was a proliferation of 60s oldie stations that played 60s and early 70s around the time Forrest Gump came out. That's a thing of the past. Those stations started phasing out around the early 2000s. But there was a time when that was a hot radio format, probably for a good 15, 20 years. I would say from the early 80s all the way through about 2000, there was this demand for, 60s, 50s, 60s, and early 70s. I think the cutoff point was like around 73, 74. And it was a hot format. And eventually, I guess the people who started dying off or whatever. And so that format is pretty much extinct at this point. But at the time that Forrest Gump came out, it was still a pretty viable format. And so a lot of the songs that are on that soundtrack were being played in heavy rotation. at the time of Forrest Gump's release. So it was, it's like, couldn't you have been a little bit more creative with some of these tracks? Because we all know how radio programmers do it and this was a practice that started in the in the late 80s, when there was the loosening of when companies could only up until the 80s, I guess it was, companies could only have one AM and one FM station in each market, and then the laws loosened up where they could have multiple stations, and so then it became a big corporatization of the radio business, and so they would literally get about, 4 or 5 dozen songs, and they would get a group of random strangers off the street and just bring them into a movie theater and play the songs and ask them which ones sounded familiar to them. And that's how they programmed these oldie stations. Because I heard Wolfman Jack talking about how disgusted he was when he heard about this practice and all the songs that didn't get played that sold millions of copies, but did not get played just because the public didn't remember them or whatever, or the group of people that they did the radio research on. So it was an interesting practice how they, this is a whole other thing, but it ties into these songs that are on this soundtrack, because there's a lot more creativity going on with the songs that Richard Curtis chose for this film. That's my long way of getting to that. But I was, like I said, he mixes it in with some of the more worn out stuff, but then there's some real good stuff in here. So yeah, that helps me with my it helped my enthusiasm for the film, because it kind of just gives you a good feeling, I guess you would say, while you're watching the film, some of the needle drops. So anyway.
So to say, I don't know how many more times I need to hear "Wouldn't It Be Nice" by the Beach Boys.
Yeah, we could do without that.
Anytime something serious happens, it's like, what Beach Boys song can we use here?
Yeah.
Well, wouldn't it be nice? Because we need to be wistful for a moment.
Yes. And we could probably do without "Dancing in the Street" by Martha Reeves and the Vandellas. We could, that's another one that we could,
there just needs to be like a podcast of like all the songs that need to be retired from pop culture, because they've just been like, they're just like that character in The Simpsons, like, no, stop, it's dead already. Like, you're just beating it to death. Like, I just thinking about the commercials from the 90s and the 2000s, and those songs are still here. Like, I'm not saying that they don't need to be listened to, but like, I'm not even sure I could listen to some of these songs. I'm not sure, to bring it back to something like Forrest Gump, I'm not sure I can listen to Buffalo Springfield anymore. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not sure I can, and not think of like every Vietnam movie ever made,
I agree.
Or like Jimmy, in a lot of ways, like a lot of Jimi Hendrix's stuff is the same way for me. It's just like, oh, it's the psychedelic part of the movie. Let's trot Jimi Hendrix out. And it's like, God damn you people. Like, fucking come on.
Agreed. And another repeat offender, and a great musical group, and they can't help that their stuff's been played to death. But I'm sitting there watching Kong Skull Island a couple of years ago, and the first thing on the film as soon as it starts is "Going Up Around the Bend" by Creedence Clearwater Revival. Like, how many times?
CCR and Vietnam, baby. They're like bread and butter at this point. Like, God.
Yeah,
and it's shameless. Like, it's just shameless. Like, it's an easy needle drop. There's no creativity whatsoever behind it.
Yeah, because they're like I said, if that's a great idea for a podcast, I would love to participate in that, because that is a pet peeve of mine, is the fact that there are thousands and thousands of songs that charted that sold a lot of copies when they came out. I'm not talking about obscure stuff that just don't get played. And I really get into it with people all the time. Every year they have the One Hit Wonder Day, and they're always promoting that on social media. It's One Hit Wonder Day. And I actually had some radio programmer, he actually put up a Never Gonna Give You Up link to the video by Rick Astley, and he said, it's One Hit Wonder Day. And I just could not stop myself. I said, Rick Astley had 5 top 40 hits, 3 of which were top 10 top 10 million sellers. I mean, what the hell are you talking about?
Also, can we just point out Rick Astley is an immensely talented singer? Like,
he is.
I don't care what anybody says. There are 3 great songs off of that album where Never Gonna Give You Up came from, and Never Gonna Give You Up is one of those songs.
Yeah,
Forever. Together Forever is a better song in every way.
And that was a number 1 as well, I believe. And then there was It Would Take a Strong, Strong Man, which was, I got to number 8, I believe. And then the following album had She Wants to Dance with Me, which was another top 10 hit. So
one hit wonder, Rick Astley, bro. I don't know.
Yeah, one hit. I'm just, and these are radio programmers saying this type of stuff. Or another one is Men Without Hats, The Safety Dance, and the rap on that is, it's a one hit wonder. No, it's not. 5 years later, they came back with Pop Goes the World. So it's like, come on, guys, do your research.
Well, and I think another band that it always gets leveled against that I'm a huge fan of is Men at Work.
Tons of hits.
That's the one that personally bothers me because I'm a huge fan of theirs
too.
Yeah, and the Down Under. That's not even a good song comparatively. And I bet for their financial situation, they probably wish they had never written it, given how they ended up getting sued for writing the song. But I don't know, needle drops this year have been something that have really been sticking out ever since I watched Forrest Gump, because I don't know, if it felt like such an affront to good needle drops. And when you watch this movie, it's like, okay, it's not so much. But I mean, even this movie can't help itself. Even this movie can't help itself, which I totally get. But I feel like we're in a day and age now where people, maybe it's just a James Gunn thing. They're just availing themselves to try harder. But even his stuff isn't trying that hard anymore.
Well, I will give him credit. There were some creative choices that he made in the Guardians of the Galaxy films. I remember being really shocked when he pulled out Wham Bam Shang-a-Lang by Silver, which was a top 25 hit in 1976. It was not a big hit by any stretch of the imagination. It was in volume 2, I believe, Guardians of the Galaxy. And I was very shocked. I thought, okay, that's being creative. That's good. So
it just feels, I mean, again, I'm sure in a lot of cases with a lot of films, it's a decision made by a committee, not even by the director.
Yeah, right.
But, I mean, this movie, that's not the case. And I like to see the representation here because, again, it's a movie about music. I will say, though, I wish there had been more of the musicness to the movie, if that makes sense. Do you know what I mean? I'll say one of my favorite movies about music, and maybe you could level this against that movie. One of my favorite movies about music is High Fidelity.
Oh, I totally agree. Yeah. And the people in that film are somewhat like myself because I'm a lot like Jack Black when it comes to having definite strong opinions about music and things. Right. So I'm a little bit in that camp, so I can definitely identify with him in that film. That was one of the reasons why I loved it so much. So yeah, absolutely.
And I kind of wanted more of that. And I'm not saying that I don't believe that, Nick Frost and Rhys Ifans' characters are into music, but I would like to get a better sense of that because that seems to be just a little bit of kind of a dimensionality that the movie is missing a little bit. For all the things the movie does successfully, that is kind of a failure.
I agree. Yeah, it would have been interesting to have a character who's just a walking, talking, breathing encyclopedia of music. That would have been a character that I would have been interested in, just he's constantly spouting trivia or something like that. I would have enjoyed seeing a character like that personally, and we don't really get that.
No, and that's weird because that's normally the kind of character that's in these movies. I mean, that character shows up all the time in these ensemble casts, the guy who knows everything and maybe doesn't know the right time to say it, but he knows things anyways. That, I don't know, they had the kind of the nebbish guy there with Rhys Darby. I feel like they had the ladies man character represented too many times almost, because it's Nick Frost, it's Rhys Ifans, it's the other character, the one who has the 30 women with him in the room. That's three. That's three characters in the movie that are all essentially the same. So that was weird in of itself, because again, Nick Frost, I think, would have been a perfect vehicle for that kind of character, just playing a total weirdo like he did in Space, but instead of about being obsessed with military stuff, he's obsessed with music stuff, and that would fix his character in the movie.
Absolutely, that would have been that would have been the answer to the problem with his character. That's a good point. And then he would have been instantly endearing. You would have been endeared to him instantly because of that. Yeah, I really miss not having a character who spouts musical trivia, because it used to be a thing that people would go to work for radio stations because they loved the music, not because they were looking to get rich, but because they just were music nerds and they just wanted to be, near music. And so that it is kind of weird that we don't get a character like that. And that's a good point. So yeah, that would have enriched the film greatly. So yeah, that's sorely missing.
Well, they all just seem like personalities, like, which, I mean, I guess is fine. And it speaks to, I think, the expectation, but I don't think it's, like you said, it's maybe not the inherent reality. And I'm not sure the movie's worried about hewing close to reality, but I don't know. It feels like the movie is just a little bit fuller with a certain kind of character than others, and it doesn't add anything to the overall movie. Frankly, again, it's just like, oh, okay, so there's not one, but two, but three guys who are just constantly getting it on the boat. And it's like, that's their, like, Rhys Ifans is the most developed of those three kinds of characters in the movie. And that's still saying something, because he's not, I mean, as much as I love him, he's just not given much to do. That might be even the issue with this movie, is everybody is given not enough to do because it's spread too thin. It's too big of an ensemble cast. Maybe that's it.
Yep. I think that may be part of the problem. Yeah, I think you might be onto something. But yeah. If there's a failing of the film, I would say that is, we do need that character. That would have enriched the film greatly. So yeah. But as it stands, you could do a lot worse than Pirate Radio. I would recommend seeing the UK version, The Boat That Rocked, because there are character moments that I do think are missing in the American version, even though it's shorter and it's an easier sit. It feels truncated. And so if people are going to seek it out, I would say try to find the UK version, because it's worth it. It's a little bit longer, but in the end does, like you said, it kind of overstays its welcome with the riff on the end of Titanic. But
and I will say, the other thing I do appreciate about the movie, and there was the thing I was kind of worried about going into it, I actually find Kenneth Branagh's character to be maybe the funniest part of the movie. He's such a just unrepentant shithead in this movie. Mm-hmm. And he never interacts with our characters on screen. It was probably an easy couple of days of shooting for Kenneth Branagh, realistically. But he's great in this movie. He plays that kind of stodgy dickhead that is concerned with taking down a group of people only because he doesn't like them. He plays that character really well. I actually really like him in this movie, and it's a villain role, I guess, in as much as like politicians are always villainous characters for the most part in movies like this, but I think he's pretty good. It's funny to see him cast in this kind of role, because in a lot of ways, like, he's a lot higher profile of an actor than you would think would be playing that kind of role in this kind of movie.
Yeah, that's true. Yep. I agree. Yeah.
I think he's good, right? He's fun. He knows what he's here to do for the movie. Let's just put it that way. He hams it up. And, I think maybe Jack Davenport is the one who kind of is left out of sorts. I'm not, like, his character is a one note joke. His last name is Twat. Like, wow.
A little bit on the nose. God. Yeah. The only thing we don't get to see Kenneth Branagh do is twirl his mustache. So that's about the only thing that he leaves undone. But it suits what the film is calling for. I think it's he gives it what it needs. Yeah. Shall we say? So I think this is a good, solid film. Like I said, I can't say it's a great film, but there's a lot of great moments in the film if you'll take the time to find them. And I certainly didn't deserve the fate that befell it. There are a lot of films that made 10 times more than this film made that shouldn't have that were released around that time. So.
Yeah, I know. I'm with you. I think you could, fuck, this month I've done worse with the pirate movies that I've watched this month. I mean, they've been shorter than this movie and had less to say than this movie did. But I enjoyed it as well. Again, I think the length of the movie is kind of hinky, and I don't know if it really has anything to say in the way maybe it thinks it does, or maybe it's not interested in having anything to say to begin with, but it kind of felt like it maybe wanted to. It wasn't all just fun and games. There are these, like you mentioned, kind of dramatic moments between characters that are not just there for laughs, like Philip Seymour Hoffman's monologue, like his moment at the end of the movie where he kind of has a monologue about music and what it means to him, and you can kill us, but the music will persist. Like that, I appreciate all of that, but it's to what end? Because the movie never feels like it lands an emotional climax. But no, I'm with you. I actually really enjoyed it. I'm glad I finally watched it. So before we close this episode out, I wanted to ask you, pirate movies, where do you come down on them? And do you have a favorite one that isn't named Pirates of the Caribbean? That's what everybody has said this month. It's like, what's your favorite one? Pirates of the Caribbean. Not fair. It might be the only one. Like,
I don't know. Gosh, that's a good question. I've seen so many over the years, but I don't know what a favorite would be. It's just a genre that I've not really been, too enamored of. To be quite honhonest, it's just,
I get it. I've seen some of the movies now that made up what people were seeing in the 70s and 80s. They're not good. Like, you don't watch Yellowbeard and go, I'd like to see more of this, please. Like, you're like, get this fucking away from me and far away, please. Like, same with Polanski's Pirates. It's like, maybe we don't do this kind of movie for a while. Like,
yeah, I do enjoy the one. I think I want to make sure I get the title right because there's a Disney. Yeah, it's The Light at the Edge of the World. Yeah, that's a pretty effective pirate film with Kirk Douglas and Yul Brynner. And that was one that I was not really all that familiar with until it was mentioned on a recent Video Archives podcast. They did an episode on that. I really enjoyed that. Kirk Douglas was a lighthouse keeper, and basically Yul Brynner shows up leading a group of people who just go from island to island, stealing all the riches from each island. So he has to defend the island against these pirates that just go from place to place. And it's pretty violent. It reminded me of Die Hard in a way where, he's the guy that's Kirk Douglas has got to save the the inhabitants of the island from these marauders, I guess you would say. But there's some pretty tense stuff going on. And for a film that was PG, it's pretty violent and pretty dark. There's a rape scene in it with Samantha Agar, and there's like I said, a good cast here. As I said, Yul Brynner, Fernando Rey from the French Connection turns up. That's probably one of the better pirate films that I've seen, and not just because I saw it recently, but just because it was quite entertaining, I thought. So, Light at the Edge of the World from 1971. Which was produced, interestingly enough, by the Salkinds, who would later do Superman the movie. So that's one of my favorites.
It's one of those movies that on Wikipedia, it doesn't even have a poster for the movie. That's wild.
It's pretty good. It really is. It surprised me at how, it's again, not perfect, but it certainly holds your attention. And Yul Brynner makes an excellent villain. I'll tell you that. That's great casting. So yeah, that's probably at the top of my list of pirate films.
I'll have to check it out then, because I didn't know what you were going to say, but I wouldn't have been surprised if you had mentioned kind of a golden era pirates movie. But I'm glad, because this movie came out in 71. Like that's right in this kind of ballpark of the last 40, 50 years, as opposed to 60, 70 years. So I don't know. Maybe I just picked all bad movies this year, other than this one. Like, you picked this one, so I can't even take credit for it. Everything I picked this month has been, look, I knew Yellowbeard was not great. I knew Polanski's Pirates was not very well received, but to hear about how bad a movie is versus experiencing it yourself are two vastly different things. One is 2 minutes of your time reading a review versus 2 hours of your time sitting and watching it. So I will probably check the movie you're talking about, The Light at the Edge of the World, out before I ever even contemplate spending 2 more minutes of time even thinking about Yellowbeard or Polanski's Pirates. Polanski's Pirates, again, just like, it's just a movie that, like, it kind of set the tone for this month in a lot of ways. Like, not a good movie, not even a fun movie. But this movie was. Pirate Radio was. This movie has so far redeemed the month. I've watched a movie that came out in 2009 finally, which again is the most horrifying part about this movie. It really is, like, it kind of mind-boggling. This movie came out in 2009. This movie's 14 years old. Like,
I know. It's scary to think about that, but it is true, I tell you. Yeah, but yeah, Light at the Edge of the World would solidly recommend that for sure. If anybody's looking for a pirate movie that I feel like delivers the goods.
Are you a fan of Pirates of the Caribbean?
I thought the first one was fine. It was, again,
it was fine.
It was. It wasn't.
Yeah. It was a lark. It's a fun lark.
Yeah, and my kids were at that age, that was their thing. That was in their wheelhouse because they were at that perfect age when those films came out. And so I had to go to every one of them because they were, whether I wanted to or not. And, none of them are really terrible. I mean, I guess the second and third one are obviously of lesser quality and certainly bloated, but, there's still things to like about them. And, the fourth one, that was a little bit, it was interesting.
I always forget that there's a fourth and a fifth one.
And a fifth one, yeah. And they're talking about possibly a sixth, who knows? But the first one is obviously the best. And even it's not what you would consider a great film. It's entertaining enough for what it is, but it's disposable pop for me. It's just like, well, I saw it once. That's enough. So it's.
I will say this movie has a connection to the second Pirates of the Caribbean movie, and that Bill Nye plays Davy Jones in that series. That's right.
That's true. Yeah.
Which for one of the frequent co-hosts of this show, Father Malone, that's enough to put the second movie above the first one. And I mean, in a lot of ways, I kind of get it. Because like Bill Nye is one of those actors where when he's in something, he's normally steals the show. And in this movie, that's not the case, surprisingly. He's actually very understated in this movie in a way that is, not that I'm saying he's always over the top, but like he's understated in a way that it's not normal for him.
Sure,
like he's sharing the screen with everybody. So he's normally he's always seen stealing, chewing the scenery big time. So
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's usually him.
Yeah.
I would agree.
So Adam, final thoughts on Pirate Radio.
Well, like I said, I not perfect, but certainly I enjoyed seeing it again, and especially the UK release version was a little bit of a revelation to me. I certainly enjoyed it. I didn't hate Pirate Radio. I thought I was on a kick with my kids with Richard Curtis films when we watched Pirate Radio about 10 years ago. So, and I thought it was okay then. And I kind of feel the same way now, except I think The Boat That Rocked was a little bit better in terms of some of the character stuff. So, yeah. And like you said, there's some good dialogue there with Philip Seymour Hoffman, and it's a little sad to see him knowing that he's gone now. But yeah, I generally liked it. I may return to it at some point. I can't say that I won't. Not anytime soon, but I think I could see myself maybe going back and watching this again, maybe in 5 years or something like that.
I'm going to echo the positives. And yeah, for me, this is a movie that I had seen previews for when it was being talked about, when it was coming out. I mean, again, not a movie I would have had any reason not to watch, but not a movie that, ultimately it didn't draw me in the way Hot Fuzz and Shaun of the Dead did, because again, Hot Fuzz and Shaun of the Dead are two movies that I have seen more times than I can count. And this movie verged on being there, and it came maybe a year too late for me. So I mean, like you said, I'm glad I watched it. I'm glad I've seen the best version, I would think, of the movie, at least the version that's the most complete version of the movie. Maybe not the director's cut, but the director's probably original vision or close enough. So yeah, I think it's fun. It's a fun movie. Don't take it too seriously because it doesn't take itself too seriously. And yeah, maybe know that it overstays its welcome by 15 minutes, but it beats watching the version of the movie that's 15 minutes shorter but feels truncated. So yeah, take the good with the bad. So Adam, thank you so much for picking this movie. I'm glad I finally watched it, and it more or less didn't disappoint. So,
well, I'm glad to hear that. I'm always on pins and needles, hoping that something I recommended didn't, because that's the worst when you recommend something and then they're like, "Boy, that was a stinker." Well,
if you know it's a stinker and you suggest it, and you want me to see if it's a stinker or not, that's one thing. But if you like it and I say it's a stinker, yeah, that could present some problems. I totally get it. So until the next time you join me, Adam, where can people find you on the internet?
Well, I'm still doing my Movie Geeks United. Once a month, we do our Blu-ray report, which covers all of the latest physical media releases on 4K and Blu-ray and all that stuff. We do those. And you can find me at focusnewspaper.com every week, where I round up all of the latest theatrical releases and some of the streaming releases and most of the physical releases as well that have been issued. And so and I've got a few bonus interviews that are coming up. Just finished. We talked before we started recording here. I just finished interviewing the director of Dragon Slayer, because the new 4K edition of 1981's Dragon Slayer has been issued. And so Mr. Matthew Robbins spoke with me yesterday, and that's going to be a video interview that I'll have up. So we did a video chat via Zoom, and also recently interviewed Nat Sagaloff, who is a great writer of books about film history. I would recommend anybody getting some of his books. He's done some terrific ones, and he's got a new book out about the making of The Towering Inferno, which was just issued. And so I interviewed him. That'll be up soon. So those are a couple things in the pipeline.
And you're always getting to talk to somebody or reading or watching something. So I always I always appreciate that you are in a lot of ways keeping movie history alive every day on your Facebook. So I always appreciate it. So better than the Academy is, man. Holy fucking shit this year. Oof. Oh.
Oh yeah, that was a shit show, as they say.
More so than normal, it felt like. Like, how do you forget Paul fucking Sorvino? How?
That was bad. Anne Heche, yeah, that's bad. There's some real glaring omissions this year, and so even Robert Blake, obviously had some serious problems. Well, we don't have to get into those, but he contributed some major performances in some films that are fondly remembered, like Electric Light and Blue and In Cold Blood.
Lost Highway.
Yeah, Lost Highway, exactly. Some people like that.
Your phone is ringing. It's for you.
Yeah, I mean, say what you will about the man's personal life, but he did. If you're going to honor film history, he needs to be represented. I'm sorry, that's just the way it is. So
yeah, I'm with you. Like I said, I appreciate that you're keeping that alive better than the fucking Academy ever even gave a shit to. So,
well, the thing I do, and it's on Facebook, I do a daily remembrance of somebody who's passed away on this day. And I always like to clarify that I don't do that out of a sense of morbidity or because what will typically happen is I have, luckily I have a big enough group of friends on Facebook, many in the industry who knew these people personally. And so that will prompt some personal remembrances of the people who passed away from people who worked with them. And so you get some interesting stories from people that actually knew them. They'll say, oh, well, this happened or that happened. I mean, for example, a couple of years ago, I posted a remembrance on Charles Durning on the anniversary of his death. And one of the guys who did the makeup effects for the Hudsucker Proxy, one of the Bermans, I can't remember which one it was, but he came on and posted a comment, and he said, yes, I remember doing the makeup for Charles Durning for the Hudsucker Proxy. When we measured him, his circumference and his height were exactly the same.
Holy shit.
And so it's those kind of things that you get from people, giving you their personal stories. I just love it. And so I do that every day to try to get people to tell the stories to keep these people's memory alive. So that's what I do.
Because at this point, that is clearly all that we have left. So
yeah.
Yeah,
this is true.
Yeah.
So there we go.
And as for me, weirdingwaymedia.com is where you can find this show and so many other shows, including multiple episodes of this show where Adam and I talk about all kinds of other movies. We have a What's Up Doc episode coming out at some point. We have the other episode coming out, but all the other things that you can find over at Weirding Way Media, like this show, Bollywood Cinema Club, where Adam joined me a while ago to talk, or in the future. In the future, sometime. It was recorded in the past, and it'll air in the future. It's magic, folks. All that can be found over at weirdingwaymedia.com. As for this show, Kulturecast.com and Patreon and all those places you can go to help us out would be much appreciated, but like, rate, and review wherever you get the show on the internet. Adam, thank you so much for joining me as always.
It was my pleasure. I appreciate you having me on.
And as always, we'll catch you on the next episode.